PV till 9P, MHP is there in the mnemonic, so it is essential amino acid. It is keto plus glucogenic, because we have written that all the aromatic are keto plus gluco except histidine. It is hydrophobic amino acid. It is water insoluble. So these are the few properties that we have already discussed about phenylalanine in the classification part. When it comes to metabolism, see the metabolism of phenylalanine. If you have revised your notes of classification and general metabolism, then it will be very easy to understand the individual amino acid metabolism. See, what happens is phenylalanine can convert into tyrosine. When phenylalanine converts into tyrosine, we require an enzyme with the name of phenylalanine hydroxylase. We also require a cofactor with the name of BH4. BH4 this 2 will convert into BH2, that is called as dihydrobiopterin. Tetrahydro will convert into dihydro by donating 2 hydrogens. So this is how phenylalanine will convert into tyrosine. So for the conversion of phenylalanine, we are going to require a molecule of BH4, as well as we are going to require the enzyme hydroxylase. In your school, I have discussed a concept of something called as redox reaction. I hope you may have heard about this word redox reaction, at least. What we have discussed in the redox reaction, that there are two types of reaction that can occur. One is called as oxidation, and second is reduction. If you add oxygen to any molecule, that is called as oxidation reaction. In any reaction, if you are adding hydrogen, if the hydrogen is added to any molecule, then it is a reduction reaction. So it is a simple concept of redox, that when you add oxygen, that is called as oxidation, and when you add hydrogen, that is called as reduction reaction. What is happening in this reaction is the phenylalanine molecule is converting into tyrosine, and for that we're requiring enzyme hydroxylase as well as BH4. Now what we do is we can reuse this material BH2 again and again multiple times. How we can reuse is, if somehow I can convert BH2 back into BH4, then it can be reused. And to convert that, we require two hydrogen. We require to add two hydrogens on BH2 so that the BH2 can convert into BH4 and can be used multiple times. If you are adding hydrogen, then it will be a reduction reaction. So the name of enzyme here will be BH2 reductase. So with the help of BH2 reductase, you can convert BH2 into BH4, and that can be used multiple times. So the point that I want to convey to you by this example is, when you want to convert many molecules of phenylalanine, what you require is two enzymes. One you require is hydroxylase, and the second thing that you require is reductase. So this is the point that these are the two enzymes that is required when you want to convert phenylalanine into tyrosine. So this is the normal metabolism that occurs for with phenylalanine. But sometimes there is an error that can occur during the metabolism, that is called as phenylalanine metabolism error. Phenylalanine metabolism error. What is the meaning of metabolism error is, I am just writing the normal reaction that usually occurs with phenylalanine. Normally what happens is, I am writing the same reaction which I have written in the normal one. Phenylalanine converts into tyrosine, and for that we require two enzyme, phenylalanine hydroxylase. The second thing we require is converts into BH2, and for the conversion of BH2 into BH4, again we are going to require BH2 reductase. So the point is, we are requiring these two enzymes, BH2 reductase and phenylalanine hydroxylase. The normal metabolism of phenylalanine. Let's say if there is deficiency of any of the one, either phenylalanine hydroxylase or phenylalanine BH2 reductase. If there is deficiency of any of the one, let's say if there is deficiency of phenylalanine hydroxylase or deficiency of BH2 reductase. If there is deficiency of either of the one, then the reaction cannot occur, because for a normal reaction of conversion of phenylalanine to tyrosine, we require these two enzymes. If there is deficiency of any of the one, then the reaction will not occur. If the reaction, if the reaction cannot occur, due to deficiency of any of the one, what we can notice is there will be increase in the amount of phenylalanine in the body. There is increase in the amount of phenylalanine in the body. This increased amount of phenylalanine, what it can do is, this increased amount of phenylalanine can enter into alternate pathway and can convert into a molecule that is called as phenyl acetate. Usually phenyl acetate will not be formed. This is only possible if the phenylalanine is getting accumulated in the body. Then you are going to get phenyl acetate. This phenyl acetate is nothing but the ketone version of phenylalanine. Ketone version of phenylalanine. So what we can notice is, if there is deficiency of either of the enzyme, the ketone version of the phenylalanine is getting accumulated in the blood. This phenyl acetate, now it is a water soluble molecule, so it can easily travel via the blood and can excreted out in the form of urine. So this phenyl acetate can come out from the body in the form of urine. There is a peculiar quality about the phenyl acetate, that the phenyl acetate has a smell like mouse. So the urine will have mousy smell or mousy odor of the urine. The reason of mousy smell or the mousy odor of the urine is because of this molecule phenyl acetate that is coming in the urine. So the point that I want to convey to you is, if there is deficiency of either of the enzyme, hydroxylase or reductase, the reaction is not going to occur and the ketone version is going to come into the urine. If the ketone version of phenylalanine comes into the urine, that is called as phenylketonuria. So the deficiency of phenylalanine hydroxylase, if it leads to phenylketonuria, that is called as phenylketonuria type 1. Phenylketonuria type 1. In short, it is written as PKU type 1. Whereas if there is deficiency of BH2 reductase and that is leading to ketonuria, then it is called as phenylketonuria type 2. PKU2. So whether it is PKU1 or PKU2, ultimately the consequences is going to be the same. This is just the etiology that is making the difference in PKU1 and 2. In the PKU1, the etiology is the deficiency of hydroxylase, whereas in the PKU2, the deficiency is of reductase. And whatever is the deficiency, ultimately the reaction is going to proceed. Ketone version is going to come into the urine, that is leading to mousy smell of the urine, and this condition is called as phenylketonuria. So once we are clear with the pathophysiology of the phenylketonuria, now we'll see the clinical feature of phenylketonuria, clinical features of PKU, how the patient of PKU is going to present to us, and when we are going to suspect PKU. If I ask you the question that have you ever seen a patient of PKU in a neighborhood, or you may have heard about in PKU in India, you will say no, we have never heard about this disease in India. Why this disease is not so common in India? Why we have never heard about this disease is because we usually do not screen any baby for PKU. We usually do not screen all the babies for PKU. But on the other hand, in the United States of America, each and every baby, what they do is they are going to screen for phenylketonuria. And how they screen is, now just pay attention, no need to write this part. This is just for your so that you can understand better. What we do is we prick the heel of the baby and we take few drops of blood with each and every baby in United States, they are going to do the same procedure. They are going to prick the heel of the baby and they are going to take the blood sample. This procedure is done at 72 hours of life. Means on the third day of life, they are going to prick the heel of the baby. They are going to take few drops of the blood and they are going to check whether the level of the enzyme is normal or not. Means the phenylalanine hydroxylase and BH2 reductase, whether these two enzymes are normal or not. Means in United States, each and every baby is undergoing the screening of phenylketonuria. But India, we usually do not screen. The second thing is they screen at the age of 72 hours, means at the age of third day of their life. My question is why United States government is so much bothered about this particular disorder? And the second thing is why they are screening at the age of 72 hours only? Why not 96? Why not 24? Why not 48? Why it is 72 hours? See, what they are going to check is the level of two enzymes, that is phenylalanine hydroxylase and BH2 reductase, hydroxylase and BH2 reductase, because either of the deficiency is going to will lead to phenylketonuria. So they are going to check these two enzymes at the age of 72 hours. So my question is why US government is so much bothered? The reason why the US government is so much bothered about this condition is because this phenylketonuria leads to mental retardation, leads to profound mental retardation, and this profound mental retardation can be prevented if it is diagnosed early. So they do not want to increase the mental retardation in their country. So this preventable cause of mental retardation, this is a preventable cause. I will tell you how it can be prevented. This is a preventable cause of mental retardation. If it is diagnosed early, mental retardation can be prevented. Else the baby will have in the later life will have profound mental retardation. This is why US government is so much bothered and they screen each and every baby for phenylketonuria. The second point is why they are screening at the age of 72 hours. This is more important concern for us. See, the half life of these enzymes, the half life of these enzymes are 72 hours. Now what happens is when the baby is in the uterus, let's say this is uterus, and when the baby is inside the uterus, and this is the placenta. Now what happens is when the baby is in the uterus, the maternal enzymes means this phenylalanine hydroxylase and BH2 reductase, they can travel via the placenta and can reach in the baby and can do the reaction. Whether the baby is producing the phenylalanine hydroxylase or reductase or not, but in the uterus there will not be any problem because the maternal enzymes are there and they are continuously going via placenta and solving the purpose. But once the baby is out of the uterus, now what the baby has to do is the baby has to produce its own phenylalanine hydroxylase as well as own BH2 reductase. The baby has to produce these two enzymes on his own because the half life is 72 hours. So after the birth 72 hours, these maternal enzymes will be washed out from the body of the baby. Now the baby has to produce its own phenylalanine hydroxylase and reductase. If baby fails to produce this, then the symptoms will appear, then the symptoms or clinical feature will appear. So that is why we are doing the test at the age of 72 hours. So that mean by that time the maternal enzymes will be washed out and we will be getting to know whether the baby is producing its own enzyme or not. So once we are clear with the point, once we are clear with these points, so using this information, we can say what will the clinical features of phenylketonuria. I can say the baby will be completely normal at birth. Normal at birth. The reason is the maternal enzymes were doing the reaction. So there will not be any symptom at birth. The symptom will appear after the age of 72 hours. After the age of 72 hours, the symptom will appear and the symptom will be in the form of vomiting, nausea. Whenever the phenylalanine will go into the body, because it is an essential amino acid, so it is there in the breast milk and it will lead to nausea and vomiting. The nausea and vomiting that is not so much pronounced, but later on in the life, what the baby can have is mousy smell of urine. The body secretions will have mousy smell of urine due to presence of phenyl acetate, due to presence of So this is an important question that the first they can ask directly is a question that mousy urine is seen in which condition. Mousy smell of the urine is seen in phenylketonuria. The second and more important question is this mousy smell in phenylketonuria is due to presence of which molecule in the urine? It is the phenyl acetate, not the phenylalanine. It is phenyl acetate, which is leading the mousy smell. Later on in the life, the baby can have profound mental retardation. Profound mental retardation. One more symptom I can add is the baby will have fair complexion. Fair complexion due to decreased melanin. Melanin is a molecule which is responsible for complexion. More the melanin in your skin, the more the darker complexion will be. These baby will have a decreased melanin in their skin, so there is fair complexion. There is fair complexion. I will explain you why there is a decreased melanin. You will understand this point within 10 minutes why there is decreased melanin in phenylketonuria. Why there is decreased melanin in phenylketonuria. But the rest of the 4 points I have explained in detail. The baby will be completely normal at birth, and there will be nausea, vomiting, but the more pronouncing feature will be mousy smell. That will give you a clear-cut hint, and there can be profound mental retardation if not treated at early. So to confirm the diagnosis, we have certain tests. The investigation that can be done to confirm the test is one is Guthrie test. Guthrie test. The other test that can be done is ferric chloride test. Tandem mass spectrometry. Tandem mass spectrometry. So these are the various tests that can be done to confirm the diagnosis. So ultimately what we need to do is, the problem is that the phenylalanine is not getting metabolized, and that is leading to accumulation of this phenyl acetate, and that is the problem. So what we need to do in the treatment is we need to avoid the phenylalanine. We need to avoid the phenylalanine in the diet, so that the phenylalanine will not get accumulated and will not lead to mental retardation. The treatment is just to avoid the phenylalanine in the diet. By these 3 tests, we can confirm the diagnosis. So this is all about phenylalanine and the phenylalanine metabolism disorder, that is with the name of phenylketonuria. This information which I am highlighting with the red color is not important. It is just important. I have shared with you so that you can understand it better. As far as your exam is concerned, no one is going to ask you. This is more asked in the MLE exam. The next individual amino acid that we are going to discuss is with the name of tyrosine. Few details regarding tyrosine from the classification part again. Tyre. So I can say it is aromatic. Because it is aromatic, so I can say it is hydrophobic. It is keto plus glucogenic. This is the only T which is non-essential. When we have discussed essential, non-essential, semi-essential, I have told you that this is the only T which is non-essential. Non-essential. And the reason I can give you why it is non-essential, you can easily now understand the reason why it is non-essential, because just now we have discussed phenylalanine. And I have told you that phenylalanine is an essential amino acid. If you are eating phenylalanine, then you can easily convert that phenylalanine into tyrosine. So we can say tyrosine is a non-essential amino acid, because if you eat phenylalanine, then your body can convert phenylalanine into tyrosine. So that is why tyrosine is non-essential. Tyrosine is non-essential. The point that I'm writing about tyrosine is the most important point for today, I can say. What are the special products of tyrosine? Special product of tyrosine. See, tyrosine is amino acid which is required to produce three special molecules in our body. Tyrosine is going to synthesize three special molecules in our body. The first molecule that it is going to synthesize is with the name of melanin. The second thing is the thyroid hormone T3, T4 are synthesized by tyrosine. And last is catecholamines. Catecholamines are synthesized by tyrosine. These are the three special products of tyrosine. Melanin, just now we have discussed that it is for skin complexion. The more the melanin, the darker the skin complexion will be. T3, T4, they are basically the thyroid hormones. What is catecholamine? The example of catecholamines is dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine, epinephrine, dopamine, they are catecholamines. So all these molecules are going to be synthesized by tyrosine. So what they will ask is, all of the following are a special product of tyrosine except. So they will give three names from here. These are the three names they are going to write, and the fourth one will be the answer. Recently, the question was asked in your exam was, melanin is synthesized from which amino acid? This was asked in your recent MCA. Melanin is synthesized from which amino acid? Melanin is synthesized from tyrosine. Melanin is synthesized from tyrosine. So I can say that tyrosine converts into melanin. I am just reading the information here so that I can make one point clear. Don't need to write this part, just understand what I'm saying is tyrosine is required to produce melanin. If there is a baby who is unable to convert phenylalanine into tyrosine, this condition is called as phenylketonuria. If someone is suffering from phenylketonuria, then this reaction will not occur because of deficiency of either hydroxylase, that is the enzyme phenylalanine hydroxylase. Let's say someone is suffering from phenylalanine hydroxylase deficiency, then the phenylalanine is unable to convert into tyrosine, so there will be decreased amount of tyrosine in the body. If there is decreased amount, then there will be decreased amount of melanin. So I can say in phenylketonuria there is decreased amount of melanin, and because there is decreased amount of melanin, there will be fair complexion. And this is what we have written just about to this, that in the phenylketonuria the baby will have fair complexion. The baby will have fair complexion due to decreased melanin. We have written this statement in phenylketonuria, and the explanation to this I have provided here, that phenylalanine is going to convert into tyrosine. If this reaction is not going to happen, then there is a decreased amount of melanin, and that will lead to fair complexion of skin. Anyways, the important part is this, what is written in the green color, that what are the special product of tyrosine. The special product are melanin, T3, T4, and catecholamines. So now we are going to discuss that how these three molecules are going to be synthesized in our body. So the first is melanin synthesis. How tyrosine is going to convert into melanin. For the conversion of tyrosine into melanin, it is a very long pathway. We are not required to discuss the entire pathway. What we are going to discuss, an important reaction of the entire pathway. When tyrosine converts into melanin, the rate limiting step. The rate limiting step is tyrosinase. Tyrosinase is the rate limiting enzyme for the conversion of tyrosine into melanin. We require copper as a cofactor in this reaction. Along with tyrosine, we require copper. So this is how tyrosine will convert into melanin. Tyrosine will convert into melanin. If they ask that this melanin, this reaction occurs in which cell? This reaction occurs in melanocyte. This reaction occurs in melanocyte, or better to say melanosome of melanocyte. So the cell which is responsible for the synthesis of melanin is obviously melanocytes. Melanocytes. If they ask you where these melanocytes are found, where these melanocytes are found, where these melanocytes are found, Let me ask you a simple histology question. How many layers are there? How many layers are there in dermis? How many layers are there in dermis? How many layers are there in dermis? Five or two? How many layers are there in dermis? Five or two? Five, four, three, two. Most of you are thinking about five or four. The correct answer is two. The correct answer is two. If you have heard my question distinctly, what I was asking was how many layers are there in dermis? In the dermis, there are only two layers. What you were thinking of was epidermis. If you are thinking about four or five layer, means you were thinking about epidermis. You were thinking about epidermis. The reason I have asked this question is to make you clear one very simple and easy concept to crack the exam, whether it is the FMG exam or the NEET exam, that it is not the difficult question that is going to decide your result. Difficult question is not going to decide anything in your exam. It is the easy question that is going to decide each and everything in your exam. Let me give you an example, and it will make more sense, so that you can understand it better and prepare in a proper way. See, for example, in your exam there are 300 MCQs that they are going to ask. How much the difficult exam it is going to be? Let's say that the most difficult paper that was there in the history of FMG, that was June 2014. The result was around 3 to 4%. Still, in that paper, if you can see that paper, what you will find is that out of 300 questions, there were 120 easy questions were there. At least 120 questions were easy. The rest of the question, maybe they will be difficult, or maybe they will be moderately difficult or very difficult. But 120, 100% easy questions is there in any exam, whether it is FMG or NEET exam. See, what happens is whenever we see a easy question or a familiar question, for example, let's say there is a question related to Down syndrome. Now we are so familiar with the Down syndrome that whenever we'll see a question from Down syndrome, we will get so much of confidence, and we will get casual. We'll get casual that we are going to know the answer 100%. And in that way, we are going to do a mistake, and that will be called as a silly mistake. Despite knowing the answer, you have got, or you have chosen a wrong answer. The reason is whenever we see a easy question or a familiar thing or a familiar topic, our mind gets into a casual state, and at that time the consciousness level breaks, the concentration level breaks, drops down, and we got a wrong answer. We tends to fall on a wrong answer. See, if I say that there is a very difficult question, we are not knowing the answer. Now what you do is, if there is an unfamiliar question or a very difficult question where we don't know the answer, what you are going to do is, you will read this question at least 4 times, 5 times, maybe 6 times or more. Whether how much the long is the question, you will read it multiple times. It's so difficult. Despite reading 4, 5, 6 times, ultimately you are going to land up in a wrong answer, because it was a difficult question and that was unfamiliar. So most probably you are going to land up on a wrong answer. So by giving more time on the difficult question, it is always, most of the time, it is going to give you a wrong answer only. Whether you read it for 1 time or 5 times, the answer is not going to pop out. It is going to be wrong only, because we don't know the answer. But if the same attention is given to a easy question or the question which is familiar to you, there are very high probability that you may have got the correct answer, because you know the topic. So whenever you see a easy question, you have to put more attention. You must read that question 4 or 5 times and make sure that that answer has to be correct, because there are the probability of getting the correct answer of a easy and the familiar question is very high. So let's take an example of one student. What he did was, out of 120 easy questions, somehow he has got corrected 105. I am talking about those questions, about 120 those questions which whose answer or maybe the topics he know. Yes, these 120 questions are from those topic from which he has prepared. So out of 120, somehow he has got 105. These are the direct one liner easy questions which he or she has read multiple times. If somehow you got 105 out of 120, then remaining 180 question you have just to secure 45 marks. That is just by the probability itself. If you just think A, B, C or any D, any option, for all the 180 you are going to get 45 marks, and that will take you to 150. See, in 180 question, there will be some question which answer you may be knowing. So obviously you are going to get more than 45 out of that. But the point is, the question which you already know, the 120 question which you already know, if you have put more attention and you have got more than 100 plus out of that, then it is just a cakewalk to clear the exam. So it is not the difficult question that is going to decide the result. It is the easy question. When you will ask your seniors who has passed or maybe have some failure in the exam, they will say they have done so many silly mistakes after coming from the exam whole. When they will check the answer sheet, okay, they will be saying around 20-30 questions they have done mistakenly despite knowing the correct answer. So this is the problem that usually the student will do. So try to avoid this mistake. Whenever you are solving some MCQ, put more attention on the easy question and make sure that that answer is to be correct. So for that, you need to read the question carefully and multiple times. So whenever asking for dermis, what we were thinking about epidermis. In the dermis, we have only two layers. The name of these two layers, I'm just revising your histology part. It is the reticular layer. So this the papillary layer and the reticular layer. Papillary layer and the reticular layer. Whereas in the epidermis, we have 4 or 5 layers, depending on the location. How you are going to remember the sequence? College, CLG, college bus, college bus. There are various mnemonic. This is one of them. College bus. The topmost layer of your epidermis is stratum corneum, stratum lucidum, stratum granulosum, stratum spinale, stratum basale. The melanocytes are present in the stratum basale. Melanocytes are present in stratum basale. It's found in melanocyte is present in stratum basale of epidermis. Stratum basale of epidermis. Let's say someone is having deficiency of this enzyme tyrosinase. If there is complete deficiency of tyrosinase, then the melanin will not be synthesized. If there is no melanin, the skin will be completely white. You may have seen some fellows that who are having complete white skin, complete fair complexion. This condition is called as albinism. Albinism. So what is albinism is basically the deficiency of tyrosinase. See, tyrosinase is the rate limiting step for melanin synthesis. If tyrosinase is not there in the body, melanin will not be made. If there is no melanin, the body will be completely white. So that condition is called as albinism. So deficiency of tyrosinase leads to albinism. Deficiency of tyrosine leads to albinism. So this is the first special product of tyrosine. The second special product of tyrosine is thyroid hormone synthesis, that is T3 T4 synthesis. T3 T4 synthesis. So to make the T3 T4 tyrosine, what we do is we simply iodinize the tyrosine. Means you will add the iodine molecules. We will add the iodine molecule on the tyrosine. If you add just one iodine, on tyrosine, that is called as monoiodotyrosine. Monoiodotyrosine, which is written as MIT, monoiodotyrosine. Or if you add 2 molecules of iodine, then it will be called as diiodotyrosine. That is written as DIT. Then what happens is this MIT will unite with 1 molecule of DIT. Mono will unite with di. If mono unites with di, then it is going to make T3. Mono plus di, it is T3. If di plus di, diiodotyrosine unites with diiodotyrosine, di plus di, it is going to make T4. So it is simple iodination process of the tyrosine that is going to synthesize T3 T4. It is simple. The iodination process that is going to synthesize the T3 T4 MIT plus DIT, that is T3, and di plus di is T4. The third special product is catecholamine synthesis. Catecholamine synthesis. See, what happens in catecholamine synthesis is, first of all, tyrosine will convert into dopa. For the conversion of tyrosine into dopa, we require an enzyme with the name of tyrosine hydroxylase. In this reaction, we require BH4, which converts into BH2, the same which we have used in phenylalanine tetrahydrobiopterin. We are going to require, and that is going to donate 2 hydrogen. And the same can be converted back. BH2 can be converted back. For that, we require 2 hydrogen, and the enzyme will be BH2 reductase. Because we are reading hydrogen, so the name of enzyme is reductase. So this is just additional information, but the important thing is when the tyrosine converts into dopa, the enzyme is tyrosine hydroxylase. Tyrosine hydroxylase. Then this dopa can convert into dopamine. So this is a catecholamine that we want to synthesize dopamine. For this conversion, we require, what happens is when the dopa converts into dopamine, we need to remove the carbon dioxide. So it is a decarboxylation reaction. Decarboxylation reaction. So the name of enzyme is dopa decarboxylase. I hope you remember the first reaction for us in biochemistry was decarboxylation reaction. Whenever we are going to do decarboxylation in amino acid chapter, the coenzyme that is going to be required will be vitamin B6. So B6 is going to be required for the conversion of dopa to dopamine. I have told you, whenever you are going to do decarboxylation in amino acid, what is going to require is PLP, that is vitamin B6. So this is how the dopa can convert into dopamine with the help of reaction dopa decarboxylase. Then this dopamine can convert into another type of catecholamine with the name of norepinephrine. Norepinephrine or noradrenaline is same. Norepinephrine or noradrenaline is same. For the conversion of dopamine to norepinephrine, we require an enzyme with the name of dopamine beta hydroxylase. Dopamine beta hydroxylase. We also require vitamin C for the same. Vitamin C is a coenzyme for this reaction. This is the second catecholamine that we can synthesize. Lastly, the norepinephrine can convert into epinephrine, which is also called as adrenaline. Epinephrine or adrenaline is same. For the conversion of norepinephrine to epinephrine, what we need to do is we need to add a methyl group. We need to add a methyl group. We need to add methyl group on the norepinephrine so that it can convert into epinephrine. Whenever we are going to require methyl group, we will call the donor of methyl group. The name of the donor of the methyl group is same. Same will come and will donate the methyl group. Same is a methyl donor. It will come and will donate the methyl group. So whenever we require a methyl group, we will call the same. Same will come and will donate the methyl group. So this is how all the three catecholamines are synthesized: dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. The rate-limiting enzyme for catecholamine synthesis is the first one, that is tyrosine hydroxylase. Rate limiting enzyme for catecholamine synthesis. Rate limiting enzyme for catecholamine synthesis, tyrosine hydroxylase. Now I want to add some clinical information to this pathway. Why this pathway is important for us to understand. There are several disorders that are associated on this pathway. See, I was starting with the first one. Let's say if there is excess of this dopamine, if this dopamine is there in the excess amount, if in excess, due to any reason, if the dopamine is in excess amount, then what is going to happen with this excess amount of dopamine? That excess amount of dopamine can convert into a molecule that is with the name of homovenilic acid. Homovenilic acid, and that homovenilic acid will come in urine. So whenever we are suspecting that there is increased amount of dopamine in the body, what you can do is you can check the level of homovenilic acid in the urine. If it is increased, yes, we can say there is increased amount of dopamine in the body. In the same way, if norepinephrine is in excess or epinephrine in excess, if there is increased amount of norepinephrine, it can convert into a molecule with the name of normetanephrine. Or if there is excess amount of epinephrine, then it will convert into metanephrine. So there is, if there is excess amount of norepinephrine or epinephrine, then there will be excess amount of normetanephrine and metanephrine. These metanephrine or metanephrine, they can come into urine directly. These molecules can come in urine directly. Or sometime what they do is, these molecules can convert into, the normetanephrine can convert into something called as vanillyl mandelic acid, which is written as VMA, vanillyl mandelic acid. And this vanillyl mandelic acid will come in urine. This metanephrine can also convert into vanillyl mandelic acid, and that can also come in the urine. So the point is, if there is excess amount of norepinephrine or epinephrine is there, there can be three molecules which can be coming in the urine: normetanephrine, metanephrine, and the VMA. These are the three molecules that can come in the urine if there is excess amount of norepinephrine or epinephrine is there in the body. There is a condition where we have excess amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine in the body with the name of pheochromocytoma. I am writing a condition here. There is a disease with the name of pheochromocytoma. What happens in pheochromocytoma is, it is a tumor of adrenal medulla. In the adrenal gland, we have two parts, cortex and medulla. So it is a tumor of adrenal medulla. Normally, the adrenal medulla is responsible for the synthesis of norepinephrine and epinephrine. Because it is a tumor, so I can say there will be excess amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine will be there in the body. If there is a tumor of adrenal medulla, I can say there will be excess amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine will be there, because adrenal medulla is responsible for these catecholamine synthesis. So there will be excess amount of these molecules because of the tumor. They are the sympathomimetic. They have the sympathomimetic action, means they increase the sympathetic system discharge. So how they are going to produce the symptom? See, what they will lead to is, they will lead to palpitation. They will increase the heart rate. They will lead to profuse sweating. And they will also lead to headache with hypertension. Headache with hypertension. This is a classical triad for pheochromocytoma: palpitation, profuse sweating, and headache with hypertension. But the important point with these three features is these features will be episodic. The reason why these features will be episodic because norepinephrine and epinephrine, they have a very short half-life. So whenever a bout of norepinephrine or epinephrine will increase in the body, a storm will come. Whenever the pheochromocytoma, see what happens is this pheochromocytoma will give multiple storms of norepinephrine and epinephrine in the body. Whenever the increased amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine will come, the symptoms will appear. That is episodic palpitation, sweating, and headache. And after the half-life is over, these molecules will be washed out. So the symptom will be vanished, and that is why the symptoms will be episodic. So whenever you are sitting in a OPD and a male guy comes to you, young male guy comes to you with these symptoms, always suspect pheochromocytoma. The investigation that you can do is you can check the levels of, see, what we can check is whenever there is excess amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine, what we can check is we can check the level of normetanephrine, and vanillyl mandelic acid, because we have written that the excess amount of norepinephrine and epinephrine, they can convert into these three molecules, and these three molecules will come in the urine, will come in urine. So the investigation that you can do is level of metanephrine, normetanephrine, or vanillyl mandelic acid. We are going to check levels of any of the three, any of the three. The question that was asked in your exam was, in pheochromocytoma, to confirm the diagnosis, which molecule you can check in the urine, and one of the option was VMA. Among the given options, one of the option was VMA, and that was the answer. You can check level of any of the three, but in the given question, the only option that was there from this list was VMA. So you can check the level of VMA to confirm the diagnosis of pheochromocytoma. So this is the first clinical correlation from pheochromocytoma, that these three molecules, you will discuss this in medicine in the pathology again. They will say that that in pheochromocytoma there is increased amount of these three molecules in the urine. They will not say that from where these three molecules are coming, because this is not their part to discuss the pathway. So from this you can easily correlate that this is how these three molecules are coming in the urine. In the medicine, you will add one more information. You can add one more information. There is something called as rule of 10. Rule of 10 is followed by pheochromocytoma. I will not go into detail of rule of 10, why it is called as rule of 10. It is 10% malignant, it is 10% bilateral, it is 10% extra adrenal. So pheochromocytoma follows the rule of 10. There are many things which are related with the number 10. So it is called as rule of 10 is associated with, is followed by pheochromocytoma. So this is the first clinical correlation of this pathway. If there is excess amount of these three molecules, norepinephrine or epinephrine, what is going to happen is pheochromocytoma. Let's add the second clinical correlation in this pathway. There is a drug which can inhibit this enzyme. There is a drug which can inhibit dopa decarboxylase. Dopa decarboxylase. I am giving you a hint. The drug is used in the treatment of Parkinson. The drug is used in the treatment of Parkinson. So dopa decarboxylase inhibitor is carbidopa. In the pharmacology, you may have discussed, or you may discuss, carbidopa is a drug that is used in Parkinson for the treatment of Parkinson, and how it works. The mechanism of action is it blocks the enzyme dopa decarboxylase. It is an inhibitor of dopa decarboxylase. So this is the second clinical correlation. This is the second clinical correlation of this catecholamine synthesis. So this is how the catecholamines are synthesized: dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. So the points that we have discussed in the tyrosine, what I can say is tyrosine is a molecule that is required to produce three special molecules: melanin, T3, T4, and the catecholamines. The catecholamines with the name of dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. Let's say you are eating tyrosine from outside in your diet. The amount of melanin is normal in your body. The amount of thyroid hormone is normal. The catecholamines are also in normal amount. Despite you are eating tyrosine from outside in a large quantity, there is extra amount of tyrosine that is getting there in your body. So if there is extra amount of tyrosine is there, this extra tyrosine is going to be catabolized. The extra amount of tyrosine will undergo catabolism, because if all the three are already there in normal amount, then what to do with the extra tyrosine? That tyrosine will be catabolized. So now what we are going to discuss is catabolism of tyrosine. The topic that we are going to discuss is catabolism of tyrosine. If all the three are in normal amount, then what to do with the tyrosine? The tyrosine will undergo catabolism. The tyrosine will undergo catabolism. So to understand the tyrosine catabolism, how the tyrosine is going to be catabolized. Okay, just pay attention. So it is a small pathway. I am just showing you the pathway first. I will come back to this slide showing the pathway. This is the tyrosine catabolism pathway. We will start from tyrosine and we will try to catabolize the tyrosine into two molecules, the fumarate and acetoacetic. Okay, now pay attention, and just a small and easy pathway. You will remember this pathway here itself. Okay, see here. Let's say if I ask you that, okay, I will take an example of one student. I don't know the names of the student, so I'm just taking a random name, Rahul. Let's say there is a student Rahul who is studying in Russia, and he is a chronic alcoholic. He's a chronic alcoholic. So when you are in Russia, there is no problem. There is no problem. You have money, you have time, and you have the availability of the alcohol 24/7. But the problem is when you come to India, then the scenario changes. You do not have the place, you do not have the availability, you do not have the time as well. But let's say Rahul is a chronic alcoholic, and the problem is currently he's in India. He's in India. So what happens is, and he is having his birthday party. He wants to celebrate the birthday at home, but the problem is the parents are there. But in Russia there was no guardian, so there was no restriction. But here is restriction. So somehow what he did was he convinced his mother to do the birthday party at his home. Obviously, he's not able to convince his father, so somehow he has convinced his mother. So at 9 p.m. the party started. 9 p.m. the party started. So I want to ask you the events, the sequence of the event that is going to occur is at home. I'm just giving you two things that you have to you need to fix in the chronology. See, whenever you drink, what you do first? What you do first? First you drink, then you sing, dance, or what you do? You sing and dance first, then you drink. What you do first? What you do first? What is the correct sequence? Obviously, the correct sequence is the first one. First, you will drink, you will drink, you will drink, you will drink, and you will get high. Once you will get high, then you will start singing, dancing, and so on. Singing means Gana, right? So the same events are going to occur at his home. First, they will drink, that is pina. First, they will drink the alcohol, that is pina. First they will drink. सबसे पहले पिएंगे. Then what they will do is they will start singing, that is they will गाएंगे, they will sing. So the sequence of event that is occurring is Pina followed by Gana. Let's see what is happening here. The sequence of event that is occurring at Rahul's home is हम पहले पीते हैं, HPP, हम पहले पीते हैं. Then what we do is हम गाते हैं, हम गाते हैं. Now see here, what happened was somehow Rahul has convinced his mother and they have started drinking. हम पहले पीते हैं, and around 11 p.m. they started singing. And they were going loud and loud. It is not Russia, it is their home, so the neighbor can get disturbed. So because they were going so loud and loud, so the mother has to intervene. The mother came into the picture, but Rahul was so high. He is not he is not going to listen his mother. So the mother has to go to the last step, that is she has to call the father. So father came into the action. As soon as the father came into the picture, tadak, and the party has finished. Everyone went their own home. So the sequence of event that occurred at Rahul home was हम पहले पीते हैं, then हम गाते हैं, then they were going loud and loud. So who came into the picture is mother, but no one is going to convince with her. So the father has to intervene. If the father comes into the picture, then the party will be finished. Everyone will go on their own home. So F and A. So this is the sequence of event that is occurring at Rahul's home. This is the same sequence of tyrosine catabolism. हम पहले पीते हैं, then हम गाते हैं, then the mother, the father, and everyone will go to their home. So I'm just removing this particular side of information. This is just for remembering the pathway. Obviously, you know more than me what is the chronology is going to be with alcohol. So first of all, this is the tyrosine catabolism pathway. हम पहले पीते हैं, हम गाते हैं, the mother, father, and everyone will go home. I'm writing the full names. 4-hydroxyphenylpyruvate. In the exam, they are not going to ask you to write down the entire names. They are not going to ask you to write down the entire pathway. You just have to find the answer. The answer will be already on your computer screen. You just have to find the answer. And to find the answer, if you just know the short names, that is also going to suffice the problem. 4-hydroxyphenylpyruvate. HG stands for homogenetic acid. M stands for mallyl acetoacetate. FA stands for fumarate acetoacetate. F stands for fumarate. A stands for acetoacetate. So till now, what we have remembered is the sequence of intermediate. I hope there is no problem in the sequence of intermediate, and this is what I want you to remember till now. The full names are not important. This is just for the completion of the notes. Now I am writing the name of the enzyme for each of the reaction. So you just write down simultaneously. When tyrosine converts into 4-HPP, that is tyrosine transaminase, we will remember the name of the enzyme also with a simple name only. Tyrosine transaminase, 4-HPP deoxygenase. HGA oxidase, isomerase, and FA hydrolase. FA hydrolase. So these are the 5 enzymes that we are going to use in this tyrosine catabolism. If there is deficiency of any of the enzyme, let's say this enzyme is not there. If there is deficiency of this enzyme, then the tyrosine will not be catabolized. The tyrosine will accumulate, and that condition will be called as tyrosinemia. That condition will be called as tyrosinemia, because ultimately, if there is deficiency of any of the enzyme, let's say if there is deficiency of this enzyme FA hydroxylase, if there is deficiency of this enzyme, ultimately what is going to happen is the FA will accumulate, this MA will accumulate, this will accumulate, ultimately this, and lastly the tyrosine will accumulate. So if there is deficiency of any of the enzyme in these 5, then what is going to accumulate is tyrosine. So the deficiency of, I can say the deficiency of FA hydrolase will also lead to tyrosinemia. Whether it is deficiency of first, second, or any enzyme. So the 3 clinical important enzyme I am highlighting with the heading of tyrosinemia. These are the 3 important clinical enzymes: tyrosine transaminase, 4-HPP deoxygenase, and lastly FA hydrolase. If there is these 3 enzyme deficiency are found commonly. If there is deficiency of FA hydrolase, this is called as tyrosinemia type 1. If there is deficiency of tyrosine transaminase, it is called as type 2. If there is deficiency of 4-HPP deoxygenase, that is called as type 3. Type 3. Type 1, type 2, type 3. Increase amount of tyrosine. Okay, let's see how we are going to remember this 1, 2, 3 sequence. I will come back to this pathway. See, I have discussed 3 disorder. Tyrosinemias. That can be 1, 2, or 3. Tyrosinemia type 1 is due to deficiency of the enzyme, that is FA hydrolase. Type 2 is deficiency of tyrosine transaminase. And type 3 is due to 4-HPP deoxygenase. Okay, so now the task is how we are going to find out the correct answer in the exam. Let's say if they ask tyrosinemia type 1 is due to deficiency of which enzyme, how we are going to find out the correct enzyme. See how we are going to remember the correct enzyme is type 1, type 1. I can say type 1 or type first is same. Type first. Type first enzyme starts with F. Type first. Type first. Type 2. Type 2. It is due to deficiency of tyrosine transaminase. So it will be T2. Type 2 is T2. So I'm writing here. Type 2 is T2. Type 2 is T2, tyrosine transaminase. Type 3. You can see 1, 2, 3. 3 is the highest number. Highest the number, longest the enzyme. This will be the longest option on your computer screen on the exam. 4-hydroxy phenyl pyruvate deoxygenase. This is the longest enzyme in the entire pathway. So highest the number, longest the enzyme. Highest the number, longest the enzyme. So this is how we can remember type 1, type 2. Type 1 is first, type 2 is T2, type 3 will be the longest one. Type 1, type 2, type 3. Okay. So till now what we have remembered about tyrosine catabolism is first is the sequence of intermediate 4-HPP, HGA, MA, FA, F plus A. Then we have discussed how to remember the tyrosinemias 1, 2, 3. Why I am so much emphasizing on tyrosinemia? Because of the reason tyrosinemia is a risk factor for hepatocellular carcinoma. Tyrosinemia is a risk factor for hepatocellular carcinoma. So whether it is type 1, type 2, or type 3, all are going to increase the risk of hepatocellular carcinoma. We can add a pathology MCQ here. The marker for hepatocellular carcinoma. Marker for hepatocellular carcinoma is alpha fetoprotein. This is asked thrice in your exam continuously. The marker of hepatocellular carcinoma. The marker for hepatocellular carcinoma is alpha fetoprotein. Marker for hepatocellular carcinoma is alpha fetoprotein. So this was the information that you should know regarding tyrosinemia. Regarding tyrosinemia, I want to add one more disorder on tyrosine catabolism side. Tyrosine, the risk factor is for hepatocellular carcinoma, and the marker is alpha fetoprotein. So coming to the pathway, I want to add one more disorder. If there is deficiency of this HGE oxidase, this condition they have given a special name. It is not called as tyrosinemia. It is called as L-captonuria. This condition is called as L-captonuria. Deficiency of HG oxidase is called as L-captonuria. So now we are going to discuss the details of L-captonuria. What I am going to do is I am going to write this reaction again under the heading of L-captonuria. HGA converts into MAA and the enzyme is HGA oxidase. So we'll write down the heading L-captonuria. What is happening in L-captonuria is usually HGA converts into MAA, and for that the enzyme is HGA oxidase. Homogenetic acid converts into malonyl acetoacetate and the enzyme is HG oxidase. We are saying that there is a condition where we are having deficiency of this enzyme. If there is deficiency of this enzyme, the reaction cannot proceed further. So there will be increased amount of HGA. Homogenetic acid will increase. This increased amount of homogenetic acid can convert into a different molecule that is called as benzoquinone acetate. This benzoquinone acetate is written as BZA. Benzoquinone acetate. This benzoquinone acetate is the culprit molecule for all the symptoms of L-captonuria. See what this benzoquinone acetate can do is, this benzoquinone acetate can lead to two types of disorder. This benzoquinone acetate can come in urine. If it comes in urine, it will lead to darkening of urine. Darkening of urine on standing. What is the word on standing means here is, when you take a urine sample and you wait for some time, then the urine color will change from pale yellow to dark brown black color. So darkening of urine on standing. On standing means you take the urine sample and you wait for some time. Then after 10-15 minutes, the urine color will change. The second problem that can occur with the benzoquinone acetate is, the benzoquinone acetate can make the crystals. These crystals are called as L-captone bodies. These L-captone body can deposit in cartilage. If the L-captone bodies are deposited in cartilage, the joint cartilage, it will lead to cartilage destruction. If the L-captone bodies are leading to cartilage destruction, this process is called as onchronosis. So there are two things that is occurring in L-captonuria. One is onchronosis and second is darkening of urine. So if I ask you which is more bothersome, the first one, darkening, or the second one, onchronosis, which is more bothersome, or which will bring the patient to you? Is it the darkening of the urine that is going to bring the patient to you, or the onchronosis process that is going to bring you the patient? So to understand this, I'm taking an example of day-to-day life. Let's say, for example, in your family, maybe in your neighborhood, there are grandparents who are having age of 7th or 8th decade of their life. So what happens is, by this time, let's say this is the knee joint. First I'm making the normal one, let's say the normal one. In the normal one, what we're having in the knee joint is there are meniscus between the femur and the tibia bone, so that they prevent the contact between these two bones during the motion, and there is no pain. But with the course of time, when you will reach in your 7th or 8th decade of the life, these meniscus or these cartilage will get destroyed due to continuous trauma. So If the meniscus is destructed, what we can notice is the femur bone can come in the contact with the tibia bone. If the cartilage is destructed, if the cartilage is destructed due to continuous trauma, then it will lead to contact of femur and tibia bone. This is called as osteoarthritis, and it leads to joint pain. And the common joint that is affected is knee. So I have taken the example of knee joint. So you may have seen in your neighborhood that every person, almost every person in the 7th, 8th decade of life, they are having a complaint of knee joint pain. That is because of the destruction of the cartilage. But it takes time. It usually occurs in 7th, 8th decade of life. But what is happening with the patient of alkaptonuria? In the alkaptonuria patient, at normal everything will be fine. At beginning means at birth everything will be fine. The femur, tibia, the cartilage is intact. There is no contact in between, and there is no problem. But in the alkaptonuria, the benzoquinone acetate crystals will start depositing. These crystals will start depositing in the cartilage. Because these crystals get deposited in the cartilage, so the destruction of cartilage will occur very rapidly. So within 3rd or 4th decade of life, what we are going to notice is the cartilage is destructed. The cartilage is destructed, and there is the benzoquinone acetate crystals are there in the joint. The benzoquinone acetate crystals are there in the joint cavity, and this occurs in the 3rd or 4th decade of life. So what is going to happen in the alkaptonuria is this fellow will come to you in the 3rd decade of life. What he will say is, Doc, I am unable to get up from the chair in my office. I am unable to run, and I am unable to walk fast. I am unable to. I am unable to uh, run for the train, for the metros, and I am unable to get up from the chair, or I am having pain in my knee joint throughout the day, and that is more troublesome because this is the peak of the career, and he is unable to go work in the office. So he will come to you with this complaint. Whenever you do an X-ray of a patient of 3rd to 4th decade of life, and you are having a picture like osteoarthritis, which usually occurs in the 7th, 8th decade of the life. So you are having a premature osteoarthritis, osteoarthritis like condition. Always suspect alkaptonuria in such patients. Then you will ask the secondary question. What you will ask is, when you go to urinate, whether the your urine color changes on standing, means you wait for some time, your urine color changes or not. He may be unaware, and he may be aware. So what you will do is, you will take a urine sample and you will tell him to wait for some time. He will wait for 15 minutes, and you will see that the urine color is changing. So you have both the features: joint destruction at a very early age, and darkening of urine. And this combination is called as alkaptonuria. So what are the features that we have learned? I am writing the theory part here. The clinical features of alkaptonuria. The first scenario that I have explained is of osteoarthritis. That is just for the comparison. And the second one is the alkaptonuria, which is having osteoarthritis like feature in 3rd, 4th decade of life. So the clinical features are, there will be normal life till 3rd, 4th decade. Normal life till 3rd, 4th decade. The only complaint that can occur in childhood is darkening of urine on standing. Darkening of urine on standing is the only complaint during childhood. During childhood, this is the only complaint. And this may be completely unaware by the patient. When you do, okay, I want to add a negative statement. In alkaptonuria, there is no mental retardation. There is no mental retardation. Why I am adding the negative statement? Because the question was asked was, all of the following are feature of clean alkaptonuria except mental retardation is not a feature. This was the answer to that question. So no mental retardation. In the next class, I will also tell you how your paper is made by the netboard, so that you will get a better idea why I am writing the negative statement. When you do a X-ray, the radiological finding, which is a non-specific finding that you may get, is a periodic appearance, not very specific. I am again saying, and not important as well, as this is just for the completion. Periodic appearance may be seen in the electrophonuria, not important. How we are going to treat the patient is more important. What is the thing that you are going to give to the patient? So to understand the treatment, let's see here how we can treat the patient. Let's understand the pathology. See, the pathology is no need to write this part. What I am writing in the black color, no need to write this part. See, what is the tyrosine catabolism pathway? What is the sequence of intermediate? हम पहले पीते हैं, then हम गाते हैं, then the mother comes into the picture, then the father comes into the picture, and the party will be finished. This is what we have learned. When HGA converts into MA, the name of enzyme is HGA oxidase. And when HPP converts into HGA, the name of enzyme is 4-HPP deoxygenase. This is what we have written already. No need to write it again. Just try to understand the concept. See, the problem is in L-captonuria, this reaction is not occurring. There is deficiency of this enzyme, and that is leading to L-captonuria. So there is accumulation of this molecule, and that is converting into benzoquinone acetate, and that benzoquinone acetate leading to joint pain in the third, fourth decade of life. This is the problem. If this joint pain occurs in seventh, eighth decade, then it is not a problem. That is not much of problem. If the knee joint pain occurs in seventh, eighth decade, that is a common problem. The problem is the knee joint pain occurring in the third, fourth decade. So how we can prevent this? See, what I do is, there is an enzyme which is just before the HGA, this is with the name of HPP deoxygenase. What I do is, if I give a drug that partially inhibit this enzyme, if I partially inhibit this reaction, if partially inhibit this enzyme, then there will be decrease in the formation of HGA. If there is decrease in the formation of HGA, there will be decrease in the formation of benzoquinone acetate. If there is less benzoquinone acetate, then the arthritis will be delayed. So this is how we can treat the patient, that if somehow I can block this enzyme partially, then there will be decreased amount of this, and that can delay the arthritis. So we give a drug that will inhibit this enzyme partially. The name of this drug is nitisinone. So the mechanism of action for nitisinone is, it is a partial inhibitor of 4-HPP deoxygenase. It is a partial inhibitor of 4-HPP deoxygenase, nitisinone, that is going to treat the condition. So this is the detail of L-captonuria, or I can say the details of tyrosine. Let's do some MCQ, then we'll take up your doubts. Okay. Dopamine is synthesized from which amino acid? Tryptophan, threonine, tyrosine, lysine. Yes, today only we have discussed. Tyrosine is required to produce 3 special molecules: melanin, T3, T4, and the catecholamines. The example of catecholamine that we have discussed were dopamine, norepinephrine, and epinephrine. So dopamine is synthesized from which amino acid? It is the tyrosine. Mousy body odor, or the mousy smell, is due to which molecule? Is it the phenylalanine or phenylacetate? It is the easy question, but in the exam, due to hurry, what is the first thing that comes into your mind is mousy odor is due to phenylketonuria. And phenylketonuria, as soon as the word will click, what is the first thing that is going to come in your mind is phenylalanine. But it is not the answer. I have told you, mousy odor is not due to accumulation of phenylalanine. It is due to accumulation of the acetone version, the ketone version, that is phenylacetate. Phenylacetate leads to mousy odor of the urine. Next is whenever you see a long question, it is not that long, but still, if you see a long question, what is the first thing that you need to do is read the last line first. The last line is what is the diagnosis? What's the diagnosis? So that it will be very clear when you will be starting the question that what you are looking for. Else, what is going to happen is you will read the entire question, you will reach at the end, and then you will read, okay, the examiner is asking for diagnosis. Then again you will search for the clue that how you are going to make the diagnosis. So better you read the last line so that it will save your time. What is the diagnosis? So now I have to look for the diagnosis. So a fourth decade of female, there is a female of fourth decade presented with pigmentation, palmoplantar pigmentation, which is increasing. So the first thing that I have got is there is increased pigmentation in the palm and the sole. Increased pigmentation means there is increased melanin. There is increased amount of melanin. Then the second thing that I have got is there on the X-ray, it shows calcification of the cartilage, intervertebral disc. So the second thing I got is cartilage destruction. On the X-ray, I'm looking at the calcification of the cartilage, means that is cartilage destruction. The third thing is on adding the Benedict reagent on the urine, it gives brown color. So the third thing is urine is changing the color. There is changing in the color of the urine. Urine color changes to dark brown black color when you add the Benedict reagent. So I have got three information: a fourth decade of life, having increased pigmentation, cartilage destruction, urine changing the color. So by this itself, I can make a diagnosis of L-captonuria. L-captonuria. Just now we have discussed, so it is more easy because just now we have discussed. So it is easy to correlate. But still, if you will revise your notes on a regular basis, then it will not be a problem. It will be a cakewalk for you to get the out of 15, maybe 20 marks. You can get almost all the same. So it is the revision that is the key for the exam. Because we are having few 4 5 minutes, I will tell you how your paper is made. See, no need to write this part. Just try to understand. See, the NET board exam. NET board was conducting 3 exams previously. The 3 exams that were conducted in a similar manner were NEET PG, DNB, and your exam. Now the DNB is merged with the NEET PG, but earlier there were 2 exams were conducting separately. So what they are having is in the NET board, they have a single question bank. This question bank is having multiple difficulty levels. This question bank is having multiple difficulty level. I can say, let's say there are 3 levels. It can be 4, 5, I don't know, but there are difficulty levels. Let's say easy question, moderately difficult, or better to say, let's say medium, and there is hard or very difficult. There are 3 categories which are there: easy, medium, and hard questions. What they do is with each exam, if they are going to use the same question bank, they will tune the difficulty level. Means, for example, let's say DNB will be, let's say, less difficult. In the NEET PG, they will give more hard question. It's more difficult. FMG, it is Mahabharat. It's so difficult. It seems so, but it is not. It's not. It is okay exam. So what I want to tell you is, the point is, the question which is asked in the NEET PG will be repeated as it is in your exam. The question which is asked in your exam can be repeated in these exams. So these questions are going to repeat it from one exam to another. They are jumping from one exam to another. So somehow, if you get the questions from these 3 exams, they are going to help in all the 3. So whenever you are going to practice the MCQs, from where you are going to practice the MCQ, no need to do the MCQ from random books. Always do the MCQ from the NET board question banks. See, obviously there is a non-disclosure agreement in NDA that you cannot disclose the question after the exam, but still there are many books available in the market that they say that they are having the questions of the NET board, and they mention also. So always give more emphasis on the NET board question, because they are going to repeat, and they are going to repeat as it is. I am just giving you a simple flow in their system. Before 2015, there was a problem in the system of the NET board, that the exam was conducted by the Prometric, and at that time, what the problem was happening was, once the question is there in the question bank, let's say there is a question in the question bank, this question is asked in the, let's say, NEET PG. and the options are A, B, C, D. The correct answer is on, let's say, C was the correct answer for this question. If the same question was asked in the FMG exam, the problem with the system was they were unable to change the sequence of the option, and again the answer was C only. I have went to different multiple exams just to collect the questions, and this is what my observation was, that they asked the repeated questions. The options were on the same. The options is on the same sequence. They even cannot change the sequence of the option. But later on, they updated. After 2017, they have updated their system. They can switch the options with one another, but they cannot switch the questions. So once the question is in there in the question bank, it is going to be there. They can switch the options from one another. C can come on B, B can come on D, and so on, but it will remain the same. The answer will remain same. That is why I have told you that in L-Captonuria, there is no mental retardation. There is no mental retardation. The reason was, the question was, all of the following are feature of L-Captonuria except. So three were the features, and the fourth one was mental retardation, which is not a feature. If the question will be repeated, again the option will be same. And this will be the correct answer again. So that is why I have written this negative statement. So it is going to help us a lot. I will tell you multiple negative statement in different scenarios, so that in the exam we can secure a direct answer, even in a all except variety question. So this is how your paper is made, and how you should practice the MCQ is based on the netboard question bank. The second thing is how to practice a MCQ. See, for example, let's say how you practice the MCQ is, this is a question bank. We are doing amino acid. So once the class is over, you open the question bank and you start solving the MCQ. Let's say you know the question 1, it is from the notes, correct answer. 2, correct answer. 3, also from the notes, correct answer. You got the answer. The fourth one was an unfamiliar question to you. You think that the teacher has not taught about this. So once you see an unfamiliar question, what you do is, you do not put any strain to your brain. Once you see unfamiliar question, you will go to the back of the question bank. You will see the answer. You will see the answer and the explanation. When you will see the explanation, you will be able to correlate the thing. Then you will notice, okay, this is how it is correlated, and this is how, okay, the teacher was saying so and so and so, and this is how it is correlated. Now you understood the concept. Okay, this is the correct answer. Then again you will do the same practice. 5 you know, 6 you know, again unfamiliar question, you will go back, you will do the same procedure, and you will be able to correlate. So what you have trained your mind is, whenever you find an unfamiliar question, whenever you see an unfamiliar difficult question, you need to shut down your brain. Go back, see the question bank answer, and see the explanation, and get the correlation. The way you practice the same, it will perform in the exam. On the computer screen, the first question you know the answer, second you know the answer, the third, let's say, unfamiliar question comes to your exam screen. The way you practice, it will perform the same. As soon as you will see the unfamiliar question, your brain will shut down, but there is no back. The problem is there is no back. So you will be unable to correlate the information. So how you should practice the MCQ is, whenever you see MCQ which is very difficult for you, let's say you don't know the answer, what you are going to do is, you need to put the screen that out of 299, you have got 149 correct. This is the 300th question that can give you the 1 mark, and that can save your 6 months. Let's say this is that question that can save your 6 months. Even if it is a question of engineering or medical science, you will put some strain on your brain neurons. You will feel the heat of the exam, and you will not take any random answer. Once you will put some strain, with the practice of few weeks, few months, you will be able to correlate the options. You will be able to eliminate one option. Let's say after the practice of 1 month, you will maybe eliminating one option. If you eliminate one option, your probability will increase from 25% to 33%. After few months of practice, you are able to eliminate two options. Your probability will increase by 50% of getting correct answer. And this is what we want to achieve. So once you are able to eliminate the two options, then it will be very easy to answer the question. But it will take time. It is not an overnight phenomena. It will take time gradually, but you have to practice in that way that any unfamiliar question, you will not go back directly. You will put some strain that is, this is the 150th question that is giving to give me 6 months or take my 6 months. So this is how you should practice. And revise your notes on regular basis. If you have any doubt, you can ask, or we'll see you next class. Okay, full form of SAM. Someone has written is S-adenosyl methionine. So periodic opinions is a non-specific finding. Periodic opinions is a non-specific finding that you will see. This is non-specific that you will find in alkaptonuria. Someone is asking for the same. What is the full form of same? I have deliberately not told you the full form. We will discuss same in detail. The full form is S-adenosyl methionine. We will discuss this in this molecule when we will discuss methionine. Same is a methyl donor. We will discuss this molecule in detail when we will discuss methionine amino acid in the next class probably. So someone has missed the first slide. So I am showing you the first slide if you have not written. So you can take the screenshot. S-adenosyl methionine. So the first thing that we have discussed today was the amino acid phenylalanine. This was the first slide. The second thing that we have discussed today was the clinical picture of phenylketonuria. Third thing, we have discussed about the special products of tyrosine and the details of tyrosine. So these are the first few slides. So guys, keep revising the notes, keep solving the MCQ. See the MCQ source. I will suggest you first stick to a small MCQ bank. Let's say, for example, you can go with FMG solution. There are some errors. I will highlight the error, but FMG solution you can start with. Once you are done with the FMG solution, then we can discuss the further part that how you should proceed for any exam. So what I'm doing is, see whether you are preparing for USMLE, for NEET PG, or FMG exam. More or less, it is going to be the same as far as biochemistry is concerned. This is my phone number, and the same WhatsApp number is there. You can write any query, or you can call if anything is urgent, or you can write me on Facebook. We'll try to solve your query, and we'll try to solve your problem regarding all these three, if you have any. Okay, thank you. We'll close the session for today here.